Welcome to Barbecue Catering Smarts, the go-to podcast for barbecue operators looking to grow and streamline their catering operations. Every episode, we're serving up expert advice, proven systems, and flavorful strategies straight from top leaders in the barbecue and catering world. So fire up the pit. It's time for another sizzling episode.
Hello again, I'm Michael Attias, your host of Barbecue Catering Smarts, and today's guest is Mark Avalos, founder of Stack City BBQ. Mark is building one of the most talked about barbecue brands out there right now, known for bold flavors, a strong identity, and a loyal following that goes well beyond the restaurant. He's not just focused on great food, but on creating demand and turning that momentum into real growth opportunities, including catering. From standing out in a crowded market to driving large format orders and events, Mark brings a fresh, modern perspective on how barbecue operators can grow and how catering fits into that picture, and we're excited to have him on the show today. But before we get started, let's take a minute to recognize our sponsor, CaterZen Catering Software. They help barbecue restaurants turn their catering chaos into calm. Discover why barbecue restaurants trust CaterZen to save them time and increase catering sales. Go to CaterZen.com and sign up for a walkthrough of the software. Now, let's dive into this episode of Barbecue Catering Smarts. Welcome, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Good. Thanks for being here. I like to get everybody started with an icebreaker question. So give
All
me
right,
a
let's do
number
it.
between 1 and 300.
Let's go with 7.
Lucky number 7.
Yes, sir.
If I had a billboard this month that everyone in my country saw, it would say,
Have food, will travel.
oh, nice. So I'm going to ask you, I went to your website. Tell me dope barbecue. What does that mean? Love the hat.
Our barbecue's dope, and it's fly. I mean, I grew up these 90s, when that term kind of started forming itself on, it took on a different meaning other than dope, like which, back in the day was like cocaine, but now it's, it just took on this meaning of being fresh and being cool. And so, our whole brand, from when I started back in, '06 was all centered around hip hop and rap. And that's just what I grew up with. I always joke. I mean, I grew up in Texas, but I'd be lying to you to say that I grew up with a belt buckle or a cowboy hat or listening to George Strait. That just wasn't me. So, it was all about, the NWAs, the Two Live Crews, the Big Daddy Kanes. And so it was just that generation. And so that all stuck with me. And so hence the name Dope Barbecue.
Maybe you should have named it 8 Mile Barbecue.
8 Mile, right? That Detroit, nah.
Exactly. Funny story. I was leaving my fiance's house at 2:30 in the morning. I had an early plane to catch. She lives like 2.5, 3 hours from the airport, Central Michigan. And I get a flat tire right near 8 Mile. And I'm like, I know enough about 8 Mile to keep letting it roll. I got off a couple exits down and fixed the flat, and I got to the airport in time. But
that's fine.
Man, there's nothing, again, I don't live in the city, but what you know about the reputation, nothing worse than thinking, oh God, I'm going to be pulling over at 4 o'clock in the morning on 8 Mile. Not a good thought. So tell me, you said you got started in 6. Tell me how you got started.
Sure. I mean, it started really just, I'm a backyard enthusiast. I don't have any culinary background into that. It was just a guy with a grill in the house. And, I would always, I taught myself how to grill. I always joke that I taught myself, out of a book and dial-up internet, and so, and I just, I started grilling and, and then I was like, grilling turned into, hey man, let me see if I can start, smoking some meats. And so that's what I did. But I'm also a guy that likes to entertain. And so, on the weekends, I would say, hey man, come on over, I'm gonna cook out. You guys want to come, have some barbecue. And so from there and I'm one of those guys that I really create the vibe. I mean, I'll have the food, I'll have the menu, I'll have the music that I burned from Napster. I'm aging myself, but here we go. And so, it was just having that fun environment. And I think people kind of are like, man, hey, this is fun. At the time I was doing online advertising, again, not in the restaurant industry. And just people were like, hey, this food is really good. Would you be willing to cater for us one day? I was like, I don't know about that, but sure. If you trust me enough, and so that's kind of where it all started. At the time, my job could afford me to buy one of those big, obnoxious rigs, barbecue rigs. And so that's what I did. I bought one that had a little trailer on it. And it had a rotisserie pit. I think it was called Southern Yankee Barbecue Pit. So it was like a little log cabin. Um, and I gave it the name of a sugar shack, and so it had this fun name. And I was always creative. And so I even came up with the logo for myself. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna call it a Sugar Shack Barbecue. And so somebody was like, hey, you want to come cater our event, and with that thing, I was like, yeah, man, that sounds like fun. I was like, and so that's what I did is I went and did this event, and somebody just happened to be at this event that was working for a local magazine that was up and coming. And they're like, hey, this is kind of cool, what you're doing here, would you want to do an interview with me? I was like, okay. And it was just strange. It just all just started like that. And that interview opened up opportunities for caterings. And so I would take this trailer and, go do events, still trying to work full time, but I would do this on the weekends. And then it became one of those things where the weekends turned into a full-time gig.
So what were you doing before you started playing around with barbecue in the backyard?
Online advertising. So I was a partner in an all-art advertising company. This is, we were representing websites and we sell their banner advertising. And so it was something that was at the time growing, but lucrative because it was so new. And so I was
So
doing that.
so I could pick up like instantly you have a background in sales.
I don't
I
call myself a salesperson. I just call
no,
myself
not
authentic and genuine. And I think if you believe in the product, I think anybody can become a good salesperson as long as you believe in what you're selling.
I totally agree with you. And that's probably why I've never gotten into multi-level marketing. If I found a product that changed my life, if it grew hair back, then I would
Yeah.
probably get every bald friend to sign up in my downline. But we're getting into semantics. Yes, you have to
Yeah.
believe and you have to be
Right.
authentic and you're selling something you believe in, but you're a salesman at heart. And my guess is if I go back, you were probably hustling something in high school or junior high,
Sure.
selling something.
Yeah.
I just have a
Yeah.
good read of people. It's the
Right.
way, the comfort level. And I've always said that if you're going to be successful in life, you got to have a sales guy on the team, right? If you can't sell, hire somebody who can sell because somebody's got to go out there and be the hype man
Yeah.
for the barbecue.
Yeah.
Where'd you cut your teeth selling? Even though you don't like the word selling, I consider myself an
Sure.
educator and I'm not selling anybody anything that I don't feel is a good fit for them.
Yeah.
But, let's just call it what it is.
No, I mean, I think for me, I'm an only child. So, a lot of doing things on my own, learning things on my own. But I also grew up in a single parent household, just me and my mom. And my mom, she was, you could call an entrepreneur. I mean, because she was a housekeeper at the time and she would work multiple houses. She would take care of families as well. And so, I just saw this from her of like, hey, hard work, and finding the right fit and, hey, you got to make sure you provide for your family. And so, but she did it in a different way. She wasn't going and punching the clock 9 to 5, somewhere. It was more of like she would go out and seek the opportunities, because she knew she's like, hey, I need to feed my son. And so she would go out and seek these opportunities again, different, and, if she could have worked at Walmart or whatever, but she didn't choose. She chose to go out and find, these families. And so she taught me that, young as is something that I saw in her. And then when I was 16, because I was good with kids and she was, obviously taking care of families. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I can do like a summer camp,
Oh,
and so
cool.
I rounded up some kids, and I would, like 5 to 6 kids, and I would just create these summer camps where we go play tennis or we go play, sports, do something fun. And, it caught on, I had families contact me and I was like, okay. So, I just kind of took off from there and, I've went from, doing little summer camps to then I started teaching tennis, at some point. And then, from tennis, I helped somebody start a coffee company, coffee nut company. I helped a friend start this online advertising company. And then from there, here we are. So,
That's
I mean, I
awesome.
guess the entrepreneur spirit is what I probably loved. And to your point, yes, I mean, there has to be some salesmanship for sure. I needed to put myself out there. But again, it started with believing in what I was putting out there was unique to what other things were out there.
It's really, I grew up, my parents went bankrupt when I went younger. Do you feel that coming from a single family, single parent home and your mom working hard? I mean, again, I'm putting words in your mouth. You
Sure.
couldn't go to your mom and say, "Hey, give me $100 for a pair of Jordans," because you knew she'd either hit you upside the head or she didn't have it. So you had to figure out how to hustle to get what you want. Was there's some of that growing up?
That is the funniest thing about what you just said is the very first thing I bought was $100 pair of Jordans. It was the baby blue Jordans that I bought because I was like, all right, after these little summer camps, I remember one of the parents of the family, and again, this is an affluent, family member, and he was like, man, it must be nice to buy those shoes. And I was like, oh yeah, but you're right. I mean, that was a taste of, working hard and then being able to afford something like that. I think first it was the Jordans, and then the second one was a Seiko watch.
Very funny. Are you a watch guy?
I used to be, yes.
I
Now I'm a
love watches.
restaurateur, so I can't afford these expensive watches now.
Yeah. So what's funny is I've always loved watches. My dad did a little bit of travel growing up for his job, and he brought me back a diving watch. I love Jacques Cousteau, and it was like a rubber strap,
Sure.
cheap one. And I love that watch. And then in college, I was down in New Orleans, and bought a Seiko for $300, which was a shit ton of money when I was in college.
Right.
And then, um, it was black. It was gorgeous. Started to wear down a little bit. And Rolex was becoming like the status symbol. I had a buddy who had a Rolex, and,
Yeah.
I knew just enough about it. So for my 21st birthday, I bought a Submariner, $825. Well, now
Oh
I
man.
still have that watch. I'm sure it's
Nice.
worth a lot more, but back then, 825 was a lot of money in college to spend. And now the cost of watches is ridiculous, but there's just
Yeah,
something
oh,
about them. I just love it. It's probably my guilty pleasure. I don't play golf. I don't have any expensive hobbies,
yeah.
but I definitely like a nice watch. Very
No,
funny.
that's cool.
Do you have kids?
I do. I have two,
How old
16
are
and
they?
13.
Are your kids in sales? Are you teaching them to hustle, to sell?
Yeah, they're both like in their own little way, They like to do individual things and just kind of, my son would, for a little bit he was like, I want to go mow lawns, and then, my daughter's like very quick, like, hey, I want to go get a job. Like now I'm 16, let me go get a job. And so, they just have that work ethic that, and they see that, hey, you work, you get paid. And so, you work, you get paid, you get, opportunities if you want to buy something, and so rather than waiting for mom and dad, like you can go out and, work and get it yourself.
Yeah, I don't like to be. I think I grew up knowing that I couldn't go to my parents because they're fighting about money, but also as I got older, I didn't want to be dependent
Yeah.
on anybody. There's that sense
Right.
of when you get something from somebody else, you owe them or they're going to hold it over your head kind of thing,
Right.
right? So
Yes.
I
Yes.
never wanted my parents, they tried to hold something over my head in college about somebody I was dating.
Yeah.
We had already broken up, but I still played the card of like, well, take my car if you want. I don't care. I'll walk because I
Yeah.
wasn't going to be owned because of money.
Yeah.
I don't like that. But
Yeah.
my son, I made a deal with both my kids. My daughter didn't make it, but my son did. I told him, you sell Cutco for the summer before you go to college, I'll double whatever you make.
Oh, wow.
And he
Okay.
he walked away with the $6,000 check at the end of that summer, 3,000 from them, 3,000 from me. And he hated it at
Nice.
times,
Yeah.
but I think it teaches, like, when you think about AI, like where your kids are, it's really scary. Like if I had kids your
100%.
age, I don't know that I would send them to college. I would probably tell them learn a trade, start a
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
I don't know that college is necessarily the best thing,
Yeah.
but selling, it's going to be a long time before a robot's going to walk into your house and sell you
Correct.
something.
You're right. No, you're
It's a
right.
very people, person to person kind of thing. And I think it's an
Yeah.
incredible skill. And the operators, what percentage of you have one location, if I
So,
recall,
I mean, there's a big
and you have
story
a food
behind
truck.
this. And
It's a,
so we started, I started in the trailer 2006, in 2011, got a food truck. 2014 got our first brick and mortar. Cause it was called Slab Barbecue before that. And so before Stack, and there's again another story behind that. Grew Slab to a second location, and then a third location, and then we know what happened in 2020. Very challenging. So, but now we're back to one location. Honing in on that, just partnered up with a group that just pretty much kind of helped us out to get us through, to keep the dream going. Um, and here we are. But catering has always followed me because it's how I started, in '06.
And what percentage of your sales is catering?
Um, I mean, pre-COVID, probably 10 to 15. No, probably more at 15 to 20. Now it's probably more like higher than that. It's like 25%.
Wow. So what are you doing? Because everybody wants to know how to build more catering sales, right? Because
Sure.
when you have a bricks and mortar, you're sort of limited who works in the area, who lives in the area,
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
you're an icon that everybody that comes to your town has to come visit you,
Yeah.
you know. And there's not that many restaurants in the world where people are, they'll drive an hour out of their way to go eat at a restaurant. So
Right.
let's just say we're just an average restaurant. Catering, where you can take the show on the road and you're not
Yeah.
limited for all practical purposes. What are you doing to get to 25% of catering? Because I'm sure everybody listening would want to know, like, what's your playbook?
So again, it started with catering, so I started with it, is establishing the relationships, from a long time ago in 2006. I mean, I was doing catering before catering was a big deal. And so those relationships, as a matter of fact, just this past week, we're during South by Southwest right now here in Austin. I came across somebody that I did an event for in 2009. And so that relationship again is just, she's like, oh, wow, I'm so glad you're still around. And you're like, here I am doing this, with this agency. I was like, cool. And so, for me, it's been time in establishing relationships, because relationships can create more relationships, and not only that, if you have a good relationship with somebody, they're going to keep coming, especially nowadays, right? It's like, we do so many weddings. If you would have told me that we did weddings, back when I started in 2006, I've been like, no, there's no way somebody will want a trailer or a food truck at a wedding. Well, sure enough, I was doing that before. And so now that it's busy and it's now people want food trucks and weddings, well, I've been doing it for a while. So now those venues, they're like, oh, anytime, it comes to a barbecue kind of a style of catering, they're like, oh, hey, reach out to Mark, reach out to Mark, reach out to Mark, because they know that the food's going to be good, the customer service is going to be great, but the consistency part of it, right? It's like they know that they can count on us because they're companies, venues, corporations. The food is a big part, but it's like they don't want to have to think about it, right? They just want to be able to say, hey, go to that person because we know that it's going to be on time. It's going to be food, and it's going to be on point. And so it's like making sure that you take that out of that guesswork out of their hands, is like they just know that they can count on you. So anytime there's a barbecue, they know immediately. They don't even think about anybody else, because they know that
Yeah.
they don't want to have to think about anybody else, especially nowadays, because there's so many options out there. It gets to be overwhelming, right? Especially in
You
the
know,
space of barbecue.
you've hit two gems like gold that are buried in the mountain that I want to bring up to the surface because I think they deserve. The first is multiplication of efforts, right? Because you could go to a wedding show and you could just try to get brides wedding show, but you're multiplying your efforts by establishing those relationships with those venues because they have a steady flow of customers
Yep.
and they are definitely gatekeepers to referrals, right?
100%.
So, and if you have to cut them, you bring them some ribs or, hey, my daughter's
Oh yeah.
graduating high school, having a little party. Hey, it's on me because,
Yep.
they've sent you $100,000 worth of business over the years. Of course, it's
Yep.
relationship. So,
Yep.
there's another way to focus on building sales is building those relationships with people who can refer you. That is definitely a very strong takeaway listening to this. The other is, I don't know if you know who Mike Roman is, probably a little before your time. He started CaterSource. there's a show, there's a magazine. But before that, he was just some dude go to hotel rooms and put on a seminar, and he had a little newsletter he'd sell for $100 a month and do some consulting. Genius guy. And one of the things he said, what people are, like you said, they're not buying the food, they're buying lack of embarrassment. They don't want to be embarrassed. So if I have a venue, if I have a barn outside of Austin, and some bride says, "Hey, we want barbecue here. Who do you recommend?" You know, the celebrity in Austin is Franklin, right? Maybe he doesn't cater or whatever, and let's just say he's a 10 out of 10, and you're a 9 out of 10. Nine's still good, but they need to know that when they turn them over to you, they're not going to get a call back that says, this guy was a clown. He didn't return my call. He didn't follow up with me. He showed up late. His people smelled a pot. They need to know, like, 100% of the time, you're not going to make them look bad, because that venue, everything that they touch reflects upon them, right? And so whether it's the person who does the rentals, the DJ, the flowers, the balloons, whatever it is. So you can't embarrass anybody. You just have to be consistent.
And that's just not even with the wedding venues. I mean, you hit it right there. It's the same with the person placing the orders for the office that day, or the person placing the order for, hey, it's our company picnic, that day. It's like they want to your point, they don't want to be embarrassed. They want to know that they've made the right choice. And guess what? Same thing. And we take weddings to now company picnics. I mean, we've done the same company picnics for the same people over and over and over, because again, they don't want to think about anyone else. It's like, why give them that option of trying someone else if you just keep nailing it? I mean, it's like, hey, just makes it easy for them. So,
one of the things that we did to give people peace of mind is we gave an all-you-can-eat guarantee when we did events, full-service events, because at the end of the day, you're not going to run out of food anyway.
Yeah.
If they say feed 100 people, you're going to make sure 100 people have food, right? You're not going to run out of food.
Right.
So you might as well make it a guarantee so they can sleep easy at night. It definitely helps newer customers with that. And then that was definitely a big marketing push for us, is to offer that. And it made people, even though any good caterer worth the salt is not going to run out of food, you might as well just make it a guarantee so it gives them peace of mind.
I think, that you're right. I mean, that's the thing that I hear all the time, especially in barbecue, right? Especially because we're in Texas, and you and I know that, you started with Corky's, and I know that over there is pork. Well, here, you know what it is. It's brisket. Brisket is king.
I love brisket and sausage.
Right. And so I would hear all the time, oh man, they ran out of brisket. They ran out of brisket. I'm like, well, if I'm serving, right, I'm controlling everything. But if you allow the customer to control everything, 100% you're going to run out, because 9 out of 10 times, like I get it all the time, like, hey, can I get more brisket and not get that? I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm like, the menu's set to these meats, and you're going to get each meat. And if you don't want that meat, cool. Then, hey, if we have seconds, hey, come back around. I'm like, but, this is the menu that the client has selected, because that's the other thing is, like, especially for weddings, I was like, the menu has been selected by the bride and groom. Respect that. And then, if there's leftovers, hey, if there's seconds, come around and get more. But I don't allow for somebody to say, hey, can I get more of that instead of this? Because then it is all you can eat. How much am I supposed to bring then? If I'm allowing the client to control, because all it takes is one person to hear that, and then the next person in line, the queue's up, they're like, hey, actually, can I get that too? And then it's all of a sudden, now you're out of control.
And I'm going to push back on that, right? So let's just say you have a price per person. Well, you charge 30% more for all you can eat, and then you bring more food and you sell more food, and it allows a guy like me who wants more brisket to get the more brisket. So there's ways to position it that way if you want, but I like what you're saying, and I don't think a lot of people do this at Corky's. We had a guy at the end of the buffet, like, I don't care, you take as much beans as you want. I ain't going broke off beans and coleslaw
right. Yeah, you can
and
have
rolls,
all that.
right?
Just
you can,
take the brisket.
Load it up. So we would chop the pork at the end of the line, and we have a cleaver and tongs, and they'd have their buns open, and we called it the fluff and take. So we might put 3 ounces of meat on the sandwich and take back a half an ounce with the tongs, but it still looks like a lot. And then when that plate is loaded up, huh?
The fluff and take, I like that. That's funny.
But they could come back a second time, but by the time you get to the end of the buffet, you don't have a
Right.
lot of room. You know, you got a bun open up and you're making a
Yeah.
sandwich or two.
No, you're right.
There's not a lot of room left.
Yeah.
And we both know when you go in hungry, your eyes are like, shit, load
Yeah.
me up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
the time you're done eating that plate of food and sitting and having a beer and talking with people 30 minutes later, are you really hungry by the time your stomach catches up to your brain? Maybe you're
Right.
going to go back and get another
Right.
sandwich. But
Yeah.
so it worked really well for us. And to your point, if you're going to have expensive meats on a full service event, pay for the labor to serve it. Otherwise, you're going to go through a lot of food. And, you know, if you
Yeah.
put out a tray of brisket and let people just have at it, you're going to go through
My
a lot
gosh.
of food.
Forget about it. Yeah. No, and the other thing that I learned is like 3 meats is better than two. And so 3 meats, obviously you get, as a customer, you're like, oh man, I get 3 meats. But for us on the back end, we're like, yeah, I'd rather get spread out that brisket amongst two other meats than give you, half of brisket and then half of another meat, because again, brisket right now is ridiculous and it's only going to get crazier. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, hey man, I'm gonna give you 3 meats, better for you. I mean, you get options now. Hey, now we make
So,
everybody happy. Brisket, pork, chicken, cool, let's go.
so just to go back old school, when Corky started, they used to do spaghetti with meat
Yeah.
sauce on their
Yeah.
buffet,
I
right?
want them. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think it was one of the brands, Neely's Barbecue. They did a
Yep.
barbecue spaghetti.
Interstate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. You know
Oh yeah, yeah.
your
I've
history.
been I've been around for a while.
Yeah. So we would do spaghetti. The spaghetti would come before the pork. Well, you know, when you got that plate and you're like, man, that spaghetti looks good. It was good spaghetti. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't bad spaghetti. It was really good. You would load up. Well, there's not a lot of room left for pork. And then when we started our store, we go, let's go ahead and give them dark meat chicken. Maybe it was full chicken. I don't know.
Hmm.
We put dark meat chicken instead of spaghetti because it was about the same cost. It was extra meat.
Yeah.
And, you know, pork was at the time was more expensive than the chicken to put out there. So there's a lot of things that you can put in your buffet lineup so you're going through less proteins. You know, like
Right.
you could go out there and put beans, slaw, and potato salad. You're not going broke. But, you
Yeah.
know,
We do three
brisket
meats, two
especially,
sides. Yeah.
pork definitely goes further ounce for ounce than brisket. Brisket is
Yeah.
like, it goes
Yeah.
quickly.
Especially here.
Yeah, I love a good brisket. So we talked about relationships.
Sure.
What other things are there any proactive things you did to build your catering sales? Because, you know, I like people to walk away with some actionable things that they can take and they can implement.
I mean, I think, when I started, it's kind of, I just wanted to make sure that I put out the best product out there, right? And so, I think Franklin's pulled that curtain, for everyone to see, like, hey, man, I'm going to smoke this for you overnight and you're going to get it fresh the next day, and I was doing the same thing, and I think that makes a difference, is just putting the best, you're putting that love into what you do and the food that you put out there, because people will see it, and people will feel it and that energy. And for me, it was like, it was also creating something unique and something different. And I'm very big on an experience, right? I want somebody when they come to the restaurant, because one of the things you said is like, if our restaurant is one of those that, yeah, we were featured on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. I've been featured on Man vs. Food. I've been featured on the Travel Channel. I've been featured at the trailer level. When I was on the trailer, I got featured on the Travel Channel. I got featured on the Food Network.
Oh,
And it was
cool.
because I was created something different and unique. And I was like, I wasn't afraid to try something, right? I grew up with hip hop. In 2006, hip hop had a bad notation. Nobody wanted to touch it. But I was like, you know what? This is what I grew up with. So when I was at the trailer at the University of Texas, I had a boom box that I would play, and the kids would love it. They would love hearing the music. They're like, man, I love walking in front of you guys because you guys just always have the jams, right? But then the other part of it, I am in Texas. I am in Texas. I am in the, forgive me, I am in the capital of barbecue. And so, I say forgive me because I know you're in Memphis or you were from Memphis, but
Yeah.
but I
You're in the
but
capital of brisket. Let's just leave it at that.
there you go. But the other part of it, this is the home of the 3 meat, plate. Well, guess what I did? I was like, you know what? And I'll pay homage to you guys and to the Carolinas. when I learned about the pulled pork and coleslaw sandwich,
My God.
I was like, what is that all about? And then I was like, hey, I'm going to create more of these style sandwiches. So I was doing sandwiches before sandwiches became a thing. I created more sandwiches that separated me from everyone else, but it worked out great because when I started off at UT, sorry, drop the name here, UT here, I would have the jams, but then the great thing is the kids would come in, they would grab a barbecue sandwich, they would grab their backpack, and then they walk to class. And I was like,
Nice.
this is it right here, right? And so it's like that's what I built it. I always say is like I built it off of two things: hip hop and barbecue sandwiches. And
I love it.
again, this was unique. And so it's doing something. What can you do that may separate you from other people? And that may be the customer service side. And I think, I remember reading one of your newsletters. It's like, hey, answer the phone. I was like, let's start with that because there's so many times for catering, it's like, just answer the phone, as overwhelming as it may be, especially nowadays with so much media coming at you and so many, sounds and everything coming right at you, right? The most simplest thing is just responding. Right? It's like just respond because if you respond, you're ahead of so many other caterers out there. It's like just that nugget right there is like I would say that I think I may have learned that from you back in the day, because I had subscribed to your newsletter back in the day,
Oh, wow.
that. And so I was like, hey, like let's respond to people because that's what they want because guess what they're doing? They're not just emailing you. I mean, they may start with you, but when they don't hear from you, guess what they're going to start doing? Well, let's respond. Let's email that person, that person, that person. It's like, just that alone, could be the separation from other people. But again, for me, it was just that love, that passion, that energy that you're probably feeling right now. But it's also just giving the people what they want. It's that servant mentality. And again, I learned that from my mom. She worked in the servant role, right?
Well, I,
It's
I
like,
can tell you have a certain energy about you that's magnetic that like this is the first time we've talked. It's like I would buy from you because I can feel your energy, your belief, and I trust that you're gonna take care of me. It's not like you got this
right,
RBF and it's like shit, this guy hates what he's doing and he's just trying to
right.
pay his bills this week. I will give you a sandwich idea.
Sure.
So, as we record this, a couple days ago was St. Patrick's Day, and my fiance and I went out and got a Reuben sandwich. And there's a place down here that
Yeah.
smokes their own pastrami for the sandwich. And one of the best Reubens I ever had was at a deli in Bally's Casino in Vegas, and the
Hmm.
sports book area. And they would use potato latkes, potato pancakes, as the
Oh, yeah.
bread to make a Reuben sandwich.
Okay. Okay.
So I got a picture. I'll take potato pancakes and I'll make a barbecue sandwich. So I'll melt Swiss on there, put the barbecue sauce, coleslaw, and make it sort of like a barbecue Reuben. So if you're
Yeah.
looking for something killer,
I like
just
that.
sandwich it between two potato pancakes and it's killer.
I think one of your guys that are Jacks, right? They have that hoe cake or something like that. I think
Yeah, down in the hoe
it's like in,
cakes down in Tennessee, and there was corn light bread back when
yeah.
Herbert's was around. I'm going to ask you this question because I love to cook. I've loved to cook since college, and this is sort of going sort of deep. I sort of have this belief that people who love to cook for other people is sort of like a musician that needs the adoration of the crowd. Or, is there part of that, when you talk about taking care of people and the
Yeah.
jams and the food, is it part of it feeds your ego? And maybe it's something you didn't get as a kid because, we can all go back what we didn't get from our parents. Story I'm making up is your mom was busy hustling, basically
Right.
working sun up to sundown. Is there part of that in you that there's a sense of pride? Like, I need that beyond the money. I need the adoration. Like, damn, this is the best barbecue I've ever had. Damn, the tunes you're playing and this food is, these sandwiches killer. Is there part of that that feeds your ego beyond the, just the, hey, I've got a good business?
Sure. I think for me, I'm a man of faith. And let me be honest with that. And so I have a servant heart, and that servant heart plays into hospitality and it plays into cooking too, because I'm about to serve you a plate, right? And I want to make sure that I take care of you. I don't know you, but like I said, I will make sure that whatever I put in front of you, is the best that I can do, and that I put everything into it, so that the hope and because brother, I mean, for me, being the foodie that I am, it's not a day that I have a caterer and a day that I send a catering out that I'm not like, man, please let everything be well. Please let everything taste well, because it's just like my mentality is like, I just want to make sure that you are happy with what you got. And so that's just kind of that servant side of it. Is there part of it, is it ego? Maybe, you sure. I mean, it's great, all these, it's cool to see myself on the television sometimes. I'm like, wow, man, all that hard work paid off, to see my show air on TV. But I think a lot of it, because, all those shows there, I think one of the misconceptions about those shows, on TV is like, I didn't reach out to anybody. They reached out to me. And that's because enough people contacted them and said, hey, you need to
You
reach
need
out to that.
exactly, and
And
then
it's like,
that's a great testimony right there.
and that just, again, that shows you again, it's like, if you put the heart and passion and energy behind it to make sure that whoever's in front of you, it gives the best service and the best food they can, man, you're ahead of a lot. Because it's like, even after COVID, even after, man, the customer service side just kind of dropped, it's like, man, I just kept going on with who I was. And I made sure that here on our end, at the restaurant level and the catering level, we just kept going and just kept that customer service side, that, hey, we make sure we take care of the customer. Because the customer, at the end of the day, when COVID happened, at the end of the day, they are the ones that took care of us, that helped us through these
Yeah,
hard times. And if they believe in
for
you, they're
sure.
going to be like, nah, man, we're going to be there for you because you take care of us. We're going to now step up and help you out in whatever way we can.
Awesome. Well, we're about out of time. Any takeaway tips for anybody listening before we sign out?
No, I mean, I think you have, that organization side. I'm a creative person. I need help when it comes with organization. So obviously tools like CRMs and that's what kind of would help me out a little bit. And so I do have a CRM on the back end that helps me keep organized, because
Good.
I know that us in the industry are creative. And so sometimes we overlook the systems and processes. And so having that tool on the back end that's just going to help us out, is definitely something that I say that to use, because it's what helped me out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it was great chatting with you. Great interview.
Yeah, man.
Every time I start these interviews, like Michaela gives me a list of questions, I never go off of them. I sort of just see where it goes. And this has been
No,
a great
brother.
conversation. So I
Well, I
really
appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Well, thank
So,
you.
hey, have a great day. Thanks,
Thank
man.
you. You too.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Barbecue Catering Smarts, where we bring you the best ideas, stories, and strategies from across the barbecue catering industry. We hope today's episode sparked new insights to help you refine your systems, elevate your customer experience, and grow your catering profits. For more episodes and insights, be sure to subscribe, share, and join us next time.